Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is decrease. Let's take a moment and review the definition or the meaning of this verb. When we use the verb decrease, we are talking about the action of making something smaller or fewer in size, amount, intensity, or degree. We might also just be referring to something becoming smaller or fewer. That is really our only definition of this verb. But as you're going to see, as our video moves along, there are many different ways to talk about and use this verb. For now, you should know that decrease is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, you need to drop the E on the end before you add ing. That forms decreasing. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding D, since this verb already ends in an E. Now our base verb, decrease, ends in an unvoiced S sound. This means the ed ending is going to make a T sound, and I'm not going to add an extra syllable as I say it. It should sound like this: decreased, decreased. Okay, hope we can hear that pretty well. You'll be happy to know no additional phrasal verbs for us to discuss today, so let's do a little verb tense review. Today we're going to practice making sentences in the imperative and in the simple present. Let's start with the imperative. The imperative is another way of saying a command, right? So here we're telling a person or a group of people to do or not do a particular action. This is stronger than advice, right? When we give advice, many times we use should. We're really saying, I think this is a good idea, right? Do this, right? Imperative is stronger, right? It's not a suggestion, not an idea. You are telling someone to do something. What makes the imperative a little unique is that we do not have a stated subject. If you're a regular watcher of these videos, you probably get tired of me saying we're going to begin our sentence with the subject, I, you, we, they, he, she, it, right? We're not going to do that here in the imperative. And that's because the subject is implied. It means it is understood to be either you singular or you plural. Depends on if we're talking to one person or if we're talking to a group of people. So an example, I should say, so in the affirmative, you can just begin your sentence with the verb, right? No special endings to it. So an affirmative example, maybe you're helping someone learn to drive and you think they're driving too quickly. You might say, decrease your speed, right? We're going to lower or lessen it, okay? Now, if you want to make a negative imperative sentence, what you can do is start with do not and then use the base verb, or you could use the contraction don't and then the base verb. Here's another example of this. Don't decrease the calories you are consuming. Instead, make sure you're eating enough protein and fiber. I saw advice like this recently in a book I was reading just about our nutrition and exercise as we age. And so this was this person's command to the readers. Don't decrease, don't lower. Now, sometimes people will tell me that it feels a little rude or maybe a bit too direct to just tell someone to do something. So if you want to sort of soften or make this command a bit more polite, you could add the word please to the beginning of a sentence, or you could put the please at the end of the sentence. You can do that in the affirmative and the negative, right? So we could say, please decrease your speed. Or don't decrease the calories you're consuming, please. Right? They have the same meaning. That please is generally thought to be quite polite. And so that might feel more comfortable for you. Now let's move on and talk a little bit about the simple present. Okay? We're going to use this verb tense to talk about our habits and our routines. We're also going to use it to discuss facts. The thing people have to remember about simple present sentences is that our verb changes based on what our subject is. So if our subject is I, you, we, or they, right, then I'm just going to use the base verb. So I'm not going to add any endings or suffixes to the verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, then you're going to need to add an S to the end of this verb. You can see that in my example sentence. A plant-based diet decreases the risk of several cancers. Okay? This statement is written as a fact. I think there are studies that support a lower risk. Doesn't mean it's no risk, but it is a lower one. Okay? Here, a plant-based diet is singular. If we had said plant-based diets, right, because there could be more than one sort of type or style of that, then we would not need the S there. Now let's talk about making negative sentences in the simple present. Again, I need to pay attention to my subject. If my subject is I, you, we, or they, I'm going to use do not and then the base verb. But if the subject is he, she, or it, then I want to use does not and then the base verb. Notice I'm not adding an S to the end of the verb here in the negative. Here's another example sentence. Immigration doesn't decrease native employment, but it reorganizes it. Okay? The sentence is saying it's not lowering the number of jobs for people who are born in a particular country, right? But it does sort of shift employment. It might open up some different kinds of job opportunities. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple present. To do this, we start with do or does. Whichever form matches our subject, that subject comes next, then you're going to use the base verb. Again, I am not adding an S to the end of this verb when I'm making a yes or no question. The only time I'm adding an S to the end of the verb is in the affirmative when my subject is he, she, or it. Let's look at the last example. Do cell phone bans decrease the number of auto accidents? Right? Here we might be asking this question based on research, based on studies in varying states and countries. What are our results? Does it lower the amount? Now, let's spend a moment talking about some words that are related to our verb decrease. Okay? And the first word we're going to talk about is just the noun form of this word. The noun decrease has the same spelling and the same pronunciation. It could be used in mainly two different ways. So we could be referring to an instance or an example of something becoming smaller. An example of this might be, have you noticed a decrease in productivity? Right? So kind of wanting to know, is maybe employee or staff productivity lessening or becoming not as great? Now, a second way it gets used is sometimes to talk about a specific reduction. Let's take a look at another example. The city saw a 10% decrease in violent crime last year. Right? So again, we're talking about a specific reduction. Now, we've talked about the word decreasing, right? We said that could be our progressive form of the verb, but decreasing can also be used as an adjective. When we use this word as an adjective, we're typically describing something that is becoming smaller or fewer in size, amount, intensity, or degree. Goodness, I'm having a problem with that word today, degree. Let's take a look at this adjective in a sentence. Decreasing crowds have caused the organization to make changes to next year's event. Right? So here, decreasing is describing the crowds. The crowds are becoming smaller or fewer. The last word we'll look at today is the adverb decreasingly. That ly suffix is a good sign. This is going to be an adverb. So we're describing something in a way that is less generally than it was previously. An example of this might be students in this district are decreasingly likely to pursue college. Right? So what it might mean, 5 years ago, right, we had X% of high school graduates going on to college. Now that number is smaller or less. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.